Now, I'm sure we'll be discussing more Lefties Losing It with my next guest. I'm absolutely thrilled to have Dr. Sebastian Gorka. He's a former Deputy Assistant to Donald Trump and the host of America First with Sebastian Gorka. Welcome back to the program, Dr. Gorka. You were in that courtroom for this hush money trial. You wrote a fantastic piece about it on your Substack. And it really was a trial with an unashamedly partisan judge brought by a prosecutor. He got into office on a Get Trump campaign. And you wrote of what you saw. You were in that courtroom and you wrote of Judge Merchan's bias in a back and forth lasting for hours with scores of requests from either side. Merchan accepted every demand from Alvin Bragg's team, the prosecutor, and none from the defence. At one point, he even said to the president's attorney as he was standing up and preparing to make a point, "Sit down. I don't want to hear from you again." Do you think this is why we didn't have cameras in that courtroom? An attempt to hide from the public just what a hit job this was?
Oh, utterly. I mean, as the former Attorney General who was with me, with the President, Matt Whitaker, said when we had our press conference outside, he said the judge should be wearing the jersey of the prosecution. This was a stitch-up. This was a hatchet job. I mean, look at the fact that the person prosecuting for Alvin Bragg, who, as you say, campaigned, because we have this weird thing where we have prosecutors who are elected to office, campaigned on putting President Trump in prison, a man who, by the way, was also funded by George Soros in that campaign. And then who's his line prosecutor in the case? Now, this is where it gets really fascinating. Matthew Colangelo. Who's Matthew Colangelo? Well, he parachuted in from the stinking swamp that is Washington, D.C., where he was the number 3, the third most senior law enforcement officer in Biden's Department of Justice. Never before in the history of federal law enforcement does the third highest ranking official in the federal Department of Justice just magically fall all the way down the snakes and ladders to become a line prosecutor in a local court in New York. Why did he take that massive pay cut? Because he's doing the bidding of Joe Biden in that courtroom. The whole thing was a farrago. Look, the way to understand this, and President Trump even quoted my Substack article today on his Truth Social feed, is that this is how they want to steal the election before the first ballot is even cast. They know President Trump is going to win. Why? New Jersey is a Democrat state. President Trump goes there and 100,000 working class minority Americans go to see President Trump. Biden is toast if we have a free and fair election. That's why they want to put President Trump in prison on July 11th.
You talked about the third ranking Justice Department dude coming down to this local court to be a prosecutor. I mean, how do we have a local court in Manhattan prosecuting federal election crimes? I mean, on the face of it, it seems so absurd. We've had so many legal experts talk about the massive inconsistencies and just extraordinary things they have seen in this trial. And yet there was a poll out today showing that around 53% of Americans think this was a fair trial. How can that be?
Well, because they listen to propaganda whores like CNN and the Washington Post. I mean, that's why. I mean, even your chyron and your introduction is a talking point for the mainstream lying legacy media. Hush money trial. It's not a hush money trial. It's a non-disclosure agreement. I signed a non-disclosure agreement with Mr. Trump in 2015 when I came on board to be his national security advisor for the debates. An NDA is a completely standard business practice in Australia, in the UK, in America, and this is it's a fabricated crime. The statute of limitations expired 5 years ago for what they charged him with, which is a misstatement on a financial internal document. where he said this is legal fees. Well, it was because he was paying his lawyer. And then they come up with this Rube Goldberg lunatic thing that, well, the hush money so-called payment was made to protect the president's reputation during an election. Therefore, it should have been paid for from the campaign fund. But here's where it gets bizarre. When was that payment to the president's lawyer made? This is an important point. January after the election. How can you undermine an election 3 months after the election occurred, unless the check went into, H.G. Wells's time machine and went back in time? The whole thing is a fabrication. Oh, and your other point is completely well taken. It's a federal election. So what is a state court in New York doing, trying to prosecute a federal election allegation? The Federal Election Commission deemed there to be no crime. Alvin Bragg's predecessor in New York, Cy Vance Jr., said, yeah, sorry, no crime here. Oh, but President Trump becomes the nominee for the Republicans. He's beating Joe Biden in 6 of the 6 battleground states. Now we're going to charge him with a trumped-up felony. Everybody sees through this who's awake, has their eyes open, and has a pulse.